Hello, everyone. My name is Duncan. This is Sloan.
Yo.
And Jeff.
Hey.
And we're Commander's Pod, and we thank you for joining our pod today. Today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about what is the point of the game. We're going to talk about what's aggravating Jeff, because, we're like basically his psychologists. We're going to talk about things that don't do what you think it does. And our main topic is going to be about, are the colors balanced? What do the colors do? What's their lane? And are they
Wow,
balanced?
you just went full on English accent there. With
Did I?
Yeah, dude, that was
I think you said Kellers.
I mean,
callous.
Callas.
Talk about them
Callas. Anyway, let's start off. Does anybody have a tale from the table they want to share? I think you had one about Arena, Sloan.
Yeah, so apparently, I didn't realize this. You can break Arena. So Magic the Gathering Arena, the official Wizard of the Coast format to play Magic the Gathering. I'm trying to play it more for the sake of we're maybe thinking about doing some streaming in the future. So I'm trying to get used to playing on that and using that format. And I was playing with one of my decks, and this guy had a bunch of enchantments out that said whenever a creature enters the battlefield underneath an opponent's control, he gains 1 life. And then he like multiplied them, so he had like 10 of them. And then I had Marel, which whenever she attacks, you create a soldier for every soldier you control. But I also had a card out that said whenever a creature enters the battlefield underneath your control, you gain 1 life. So essentially, I would attack with Marel, I made her indestructible, so she couldn't die. I would create 35 tokens, and then I also had the guy out in our last episode. We talked about Roaming Throne and the guy who triples tokens when you create them. Had them both out on the field, so then I was making like 90 tokens,
and he's
gaining 950 life, and like the game just stopped, and it said this game is ended in a draw, and it just turned off. I was like, oh. Okay, you can do that.
I mean, to be fair, any other human being would also be like, that's enough of this.
Yeah.
This
So
is nonsense.
my hope was to eventually, I had enough creatures out to where I didn't need to make any more, and I'd just start swinging at him and killing him very slowly, even though he would have like 1 billion life. Eventually, I would get there.
Sure,
But
right.
the MTG Arena is just like, no, we're not going to deal with this. And so, essentially, we broke the game.
I mean,
and it
to
just
be honest
said,
with you, if you stopped
draw.
at 50 creatures, you would have eventually killed him.
yeah, I mean,
So maybe this is a thing about greed. Maybe we need to talk about the greed.
No, because at the same time, too, I was like, you know what? I think if I do at least get it to draw, that way I can say I didn't lose. So it eventually became my goal to see how many I can make before the game just stopped us.
And by the way, there are people that love to win, and there are people that hate to lose.
Yes.
And they're not necessarily the same thing,
No.
as illustrated here.
Right, and that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about what is the point of EDH to you? Is it to win? Is it to have fun? Is it to hang out with your buddies? So what is it to you, Sloan? I think you're the most pure Magic player we decided among us. You're for the love of the game.
I will say that I am competitive. I do love to win. However, I'm more about the journey, not the destination sometimes. And so for me, a lot of times it's how you win. So going off with fun combos, or for me, a lot of times it's also building decks that you don't see. I like, for example, the upkeep trigger deck, Obeka Splitter of Seconds. The reason why I wanted to build her is like, how many times can you say, I killed somebody just by having an upkeep? Like, it's not something you hear. So I think it's fun to kind of build those types of decks. So I like building kind of off the cuff decks that you don't see a lot. And I like trying to win in fun ways. So for me, it is about winning, but it's how I win and how I get there. Creating a Finn the Fangbearer, a Death Touch tribal that is actually Infect. Like, to me, that's funny. It's like, no, I'm not playing an Infect deck, but I am. Like, to me, that's hilarious because technically I'm not lying. I'm not playing an Infect deck.
Yeah,
It's a Death
it's
Touch.
super funny when he does it to us.
Right.
We're just cracking up
And
laughing.
then I have 12 fogs in that deck, so then I just fog the crap out of everybody else.
Which is also super fun.
Right. So for me, it's the idea of how I'm winning and how I'm getting to that win. That's super fun for me. And playing deck types that I don't see a lot, or building commanders that you don't really see played a lot and don't get a lot of love, which is actually Oliver, our Patreon. He said that's one of his main reasons why he also plays commander. So Finding those niche commanders that you don't really see a lot and finding a way to win with them in a fun way for me is super fun and cool.
By the way, you're mentioning Oliver on the Patreon. The Patreon is open.
Yes, it is. It's up and
So
running.
you can go on there and help support the podcast, which we would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you if you do that.
Patreon.com/commanderspod.
And our Discord is officially up and running as well, which is how Oliver has been communicating with us. He doesn't have to do emails anymore. We got a couple of different chats open on there, so you can drop stories, deck lists in there, and potential Tales of the Table too, if you have a Tales of the Table.
Yeah, our goal for this really is eventually we want your tales from the table.
Yeah,
This isn't going to be our tales from the table. It's going to be your tales because we got our own, and we'll throw them in there every once in a while. But
if we get a
yours.
real juicy one, we'll definitely throw it in there. But we would love to hear from you guys about that and have you guys more involved with the show. So if you got one, please, send it to us via email or we have the Twitter up now too.
Cast@commanderspod.com. You can find us on Twitter. Just search for Commanders Pod. But
I believe it's at commanders_pod, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So my idea of Magic for specifically Commander, which is what we all play now, is that idea of winning in a fun way and using commanders that you don't see a lot, that don't get a lot of love. So that's kind of why I play it and why I like to do it. And
okay, Jeff, what about you? You just like to win,
Yeah, I love strategy games. I like all strategy games.
but only when you're winning.
No, I like them when I don't win. I just
like them less.
I'm very dedicated to understanding how to win. And it's different than say like Duncan. Duncan understands all the rules, which does help you win. For sure, it can make a difference. But I like to understand the strategy of other people also, and I tend to do pretty good when we play games. I tend to do pretty well. But I like to walk away with at least that I've won. That's gonna sound kind of jerky, but I like to win more than others. So I feel pretty good when I walk away and I've won more than the others. There was a time where I liked to win 50% of the games, but as everybody got better, that became more and more difficult. That's pretty hard to do these days.
I will say our pendulum for our little pod here that we play in has swung drastically. So when we first started, when I got them into Commander, I think I was winning the most just because I had the most Commander decks and I had been playing the most at that time. Then it swung very drastically to Duncan and Jeff because then they both built 60 decks. And I was like, oh, dang.
I don't have 60 decks.
Lies. And
No, like 23.
So
still a lot.
They started winning a lot. And then it kind of came back to the middle where we're all, I think, pretty evenly winning amongst our pod.
It also helps that I don't play much.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, that's one way to protect your win streak. Is just
real life has made playing Magic somewhat difficult over the last few months. But
for me, the point of EDH. So there's different points, right? When I'm building, I love building, which is why I have so many decks.
Yeah,
I love finding something and figuring out, well, how can I build this? I want my decks to be unique, like you said. Yeah. And if it's not the commander that's unique, maybe I'm doing something different with it from what other people do, right? Yeah. So I love building unique. I also like to see how far can I push things, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this can do this a little bit, but can I push it further? Mm-hmm. My anti-flash deck is all doubling triggers, and I love, that's one of my favorite decks right now because there's so many cards in there, double triggers. I'm almost always getting at least 2 triggers, if not 3, 4, or 5. Right. So I love that one. But I love building for that reason. Yeah. When I play, I like policing the table. That's why I'm control. I like being the guy that says, I'm going to try and hold everyone back and be that guy at the table, the sheriff. And then when I can finally push to win, I'll push to win.
And you were always going to kind of have stuff to do with that too.
Right.
It's not like you're ever just sitting around.
No.
You're getting to interact.
But I'm also okay if I am. And a lot of people aren't. That's why a lot of people can't play control. But I am often okay playing a land and passing my turn 2 turns in a row, 3 turns in a row.
Yeah.
I don't mind that because I know I got answers in my hand.
Right.
And I got a goal down the road I'm working for.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I'll tell you, as much as winning was driving a lot of the reason why I played, recently my kids have gotten into it, and now I have a whole bunch of kids come over to the house. I have a 11 and 12-year-old, soon to be 13, and there will sometimes be 5 or 6 kids in our house playing with my cards, and there's not even room for me to play, and I'm probably working on something, but they're playing, and I realize sharing the cards that I've collected has also become maybe more like significantly more fun than winning. Because just going out there and watching them enjoy the things I've collected is really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I also love collecting, talking about that. I love collecting the cards, having the cards, not, having at least one of all the cool stuff.
Yeah, you are, I think I said this in a previous episode, but we also play D&D together. He is a dice goblin. So the fact that he's also an MTG card goblin just lines up. I'm surprised your favorite card isn't Dockside Extortionist, which just gives you more cards.
Oh, it's definitely up there, but it's not underplayed. That's for sure.
Referring to our last episode.
It is a little underplayed, actually, just because it's so expensive.
It's $60.
It's not undervalued.
Yeah,
it's not undervalued.
Yeah, it's not undervalued. It's monetarily underplayed because it's an expensive card. So
if Jeff's elected president, it's a dockside for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I like that too. I do enjoy, and even again, kind of leaning back into our last episode, I like finding cards too that you're like, you know what, this would be a really good card in this one instance, like for this deck. This would be cool. Like even if it like any other time it's a horrible card, but then it's like, well, now it's good if I put it in this one deck that makes it better. So finding cards like that too, and have like being able to play some of those really old cards that used to not be good, but now they're getting good because they're coming out with new mechanics that make them good.
And that's
cool too.
That's the other thing you can do too, is it's really fun about the game, and it kind of mixes into winning too, because those old cards sometimes become worth a lot of money based on a commander that comes out.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you can keep your eye on stuff, you can go find gems for cheap, buy them, and then your cards are worth a bunch. And then the other thing you could do too is look at cards that are coming out and go, that card's going to be valuable. Right now it's $5, $2, $1. Buy a bunch of them, and then the thing's worth $30, which we've talked about Romy throwing a ton. Let's not get back into the thing, but that was one that I bought for somewhere between $5 and $10, and it's worth like 25 or something now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I bought a bunch of them.
I know a lot of people when the new Tiny Bones came out. Tiny Bones the Pickpocket. That was like $1.
Yeah.
When it first came out.
Yeah.
It's $20-$30 now.
Yep, sounds about right.
Yeah,
And that just
good
a couple
call.
weeks.
If you did that, man, that's fun.
Yeah, the other one that these two guys got to do was Jeweled Lotus when that one dropped.
Well, I mean, that one was never super cheap, though.
No, it wasn't super cheap, but it has exponentially
But I
grown
bought 5
compared
of
to
them
when
at
it came out.
$50 each.
And they're like 150 a pop
Yep.
now or something like that.
Yeah.
And the one that you did have that you've said previously you regret getting rid of, which was the full art
foil
etched
etched, yeah.
I think you said you sold it for like 400 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. It was a gorgeous card for sure. So, but yeah, like
Regret that.
yeah, but again, those are cards that exponentially grew from when they came out to now. So I mean, yeah, I think this might be the least counterspelly.
Well, but we each have our own thing.
Yeah,
right?
we've definitely done it. We definitely have our own niches.
It's like a Venn diagram. Like there's a point in the middle where two of us will overlap, or maybe three of us overlap, but we each have our thing. Jeff, I think, more cares about winning than you or I.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're all little Venn diagram circles, and in the middle, it all comes back to just to play Magic.
I will say this too. I will say this too. Although I care about winning, I also, and you guys both experienced this, but Duncan more, I don't get to play a ton. So when I go play, I want to have a good experience. I want to have fun with people that are laughing and having a good time.
Right.
And when people are salty or rude or not kind to others, that's where, like, for me, it's ruined. I'm not having a good time.
Yeah.
So for me too, it really is fun. Like, I want to go hang out with people and have a good time.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that is, and I said it on other podcast, don't draw your value from this game.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you're way too invested in it, and you're going to get real bent out of shape when things don't go your way. Get your value from real life, and then just come hang out with your friends and goof off. Which means that if someone does a suboptimal play, like plays, hey, you didn't say please, the counterspell from our last episode, right? And someone's like, so wait, and then they say please, and you're like, oh, I can't counter you. And they're like, I know you have that counter. You're like, but I can't. They said please.
I can't. Why can't you?
And they're all bent out of shape.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, no, that's hilarious. Just laugh at it. Move on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think we all have our own viewpoints. We have some overlap, but we all have the unique things. You're going to have your own unique things that you like. Some people really they don't like building at all. They just want to collect, use a net deck it.
Yep.
And they love the strategy of playing, or they want to just win. and so that's their thing.
Yeah,
You know,
some people just love high power, like they just want to play high power decks. Like they want to try to win the game in 3 turns or 4 turns.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah,
you know, what I mean?
straight
They
up
just
Joker style. You know?
they just play decks that are just like nobody wins. It's no fun for anybody. I'm not naming any
sometimes
names,
can
but
be
maybe
funny.
Lizard might fall into
As
that
long as the game
category.
doesn't
Yeah,
take
he
too
does,
long,
for
that's
sure.
funny.
Yeah, when you stalemate a game and literally you can't untap anything, you can't cast any spells, you can't draw a card, you can't discard, like you can't do anything in the game. Everyone just sits there and stares at each other. It's like, okay, well, I guess on to the next one.
Yep. Yeah, that's his favorite. He played a Hedagetsu deck where everybody died at the same time, even him.
I respect that. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
No, it is.
Except for in a tournament.
Well, it's a funny story. So there is a tournament tonight, and he is playing for a CDH tournament. He's playing an anti-CEDH deck. It's just meant to just stop CEDH and make it go to time so nobody wins.
He's such a troll.
That's not.
That's
I feel bad
like
for
I
whoever
feel
ends up
bad,
in
but at the
those
same
pods.
time,
That's
that is
rough.
hysterical. I think that's a great way to win.
Yeah, but whoever's in that pod to begin with, they're
Just-
sunk.
You better have an answer. You better have it quick. Is all I'm going to say.
Yep.
So
All right. So, but I'm sure it's going to aggravate him. Aggro
Indeed.
Jeff, what's aggravating you today?
Well, what's aggravating me today is sort of, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but there's a ton of unwritten stuff in Magic, and one of them is the names of things, the words for things like Gruul, Simic, all these different things, which we'll be talking about that later in the podcast. But even things like Timmy, Johnny, Spike, or Sakura Tribe Elder being called Steve. Like, I don't know where all this stuff comes from. I'd like a memo when these things change, because someone goes, I'm going to play a Steve, and I'm like, what is a Steve, right? Which
Yeah.
I know, but there could be someone who doesn't know, right? They're not up on the lingo. It's just very confusing. So I'd like to know who's responsible for this. And I'd like to kindly ask them to please include me in whatever memo there is so I can know what in the heck is going on from time to time.
yeah, when they just come out with random nicknames for things.
I love some of them, though. Tim, the prodigal sorcerer.
yeah,
Yeah, the sad robot.
yeah. Sad robot.
It's
For,
great. I'm not
Sullen
saying they're not
Simulacrum.
great. I'm just saying I would like to know.
Yeah, and especially if you're a new player and someone says I'm playing a sad robot, you're like, when did
But
robot
that's a literal translation of what the card is.
Yeah.
But again, if
Yeah,
you've
it
never
really
played
is.
Magic, you're like, what does a sad robot do?
Yeah,
Like,
when I
why-
first
like,
when I first started playing, I was confused all the time. Like I was like, how does Gruul? Wait, how do they get Gruul? Wait, what letters are they mixing up to do this? And
Right.
later on, we're going to explain it, but
I saw
there are
somebody-
people out there figuring this out.
Somebody on Facebook, I'm in several Magic the Gathering groups, and one of them posted, why is blue you in Wooburg? Like, how did that happen?
No, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because and logically speaking, I know why. Because black and blue both start with BL,
Yeah.
and so you go to the third letter, which
Yeah.
is the first change, and there you go. You got
which
you.
we are going to talk about more.
Yeah,
later.
yeah, for sure. So, but I wish they had a memo. I think it's just players, honestly, that make stuff
Yeah,
up.
Yeah,
too.
I
people
was going to
with-
say,
yeah,
it's
it's how
us.
language
not
works.
literally
Yeah.
us, but it's the players that do
Yeah.
it.
You know what? I'm going to try to find one that no one's done before, and I'm just going to keep saying it until it becomes thing, and then I'm going to make everyone pay me because I'm going to, what's it called? Patent it.
Yeah.
So people
We'll
can,
see how that works.
I'll
Yeah,
try.
I'm sure.
Let me know how
I'm
that
sure
works.
you'll be
I'll let you know.
successful.
So we're going to move on to that doesn't do what you think it does. And this one's pretty specific. But it's Lion's Eye Diamond. And the reason why this one is so confusing in this case, they have changed the rule literally at least 3 times and gone
Right.
back and forth.
Right.
So when it first came out, it said that using the mana was an interrupt. Okay, and which now is an instant.
Correct.
But that was a separate thing back then. And so what does that mean and how do you use it? So originally, if you wanted to use Lion's Eye Diamond, you would sacrifice it. Somebody could respond to the sacrifice, and if they stifled or something, you would not get your
Do you
mana.
want to read the card too? Because it's a pretty expensive card. People,
Yeah,
very
Lion's
well
Eye
may not
Diamond is
be
like
familiar
one of
with
the
this card.
original cards, like from forever ago. And it's one of those cards where when we originally were talking about the power creep last episode,
Yeah.
this is one of those cards that became more and more powerful as the game evolved. It got stronger and stronger, and it became one of those things where it's a straight up staple
Right.
in
CED.
competitive format now. Like
Yeah.
you have to have one of these in
So-
most
so-
decks.
And it's running for like $500 too, by the way.
So it's sacrifice. It's a 0-drop artifact. Sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond. Discard your hand. Then the colon. Add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast an instant. This is the new Oracle text. Okay. But originally, so what that meant was you had to sacrifice it. Somebody could respond. Then you have to discard your hand.
Right.
Then you get the mana.
Right.
Then you can do something with it.
Right.
Okay. So what happened was it had very limited use, right? What are you going to use that mana for? You got no cards in your hand. You can only use that mana for abilities or something like that, or maybe casting your commander out of the command zone.
Right.
So they changed the ruling, and they said changed what they didn't actually just change this. What they changed is the way spells worked, and they said, well, now you can announce your spell first, then pay for it. So you would put the spell on the table, then you produce the mana for it, and then you could go about resolving it.
Which is really
Right.
interesting because when we first started playing, we were really big on like tap your mana and then play your card. But then as you watch other people play, they play their card and then tap their mana.
Right.
Right.
So this fits more with that. We were
Right.
actually doing it wrong.
Right. So then that changed how this worked. Now you can actually use a spell from your hand.
Right.
Right. So the famous example was Underworld Breach. You know, because if you play Underworld Breach, sacrifice this for 3 red
Then
mana.
you can play
Now
it.
you can play that spell that
And you have
announced,
infinite.
and all your spells go to the graveyard, which you can then play those.
Right.
And you can keep bringing the Lion's Eye Diamond back, and you can keep looping this over and over and just cast a ton of stuff.
Crazy.
But now they have changed it back to the way it was originally. So it still sacrifices as an instant. This part has never changed, except for going from interrupt to instant. But you cannot announce your spell first and then pay for it.
Right.
You have to
Oh,
pay for it
interesting.
first. So now you
Okay.
are back to you have to discard your hand as part of resolving it. So you cannot use it for spells from your
And
hand.
this really doesn't just apply to Lion's Eye Diamond because it really applies to everything you do in the game now.
Right. Right. So they've changed that rule. And in both cases, it changed more than just Lion's Eye Diamond.
Right.
Wow.
But it's so confusing now.
Yeah.
Because no matter which way you look at it, you can look up online and find the answer that you're looking for and be like, see, I'm right.
Right. And I would say because of the way the card is specifically written with the discard your hand as part of the cost, that is the way it should be. You should not be able to use something in your hand because it specifically has the colon after.
Right. But when they changed the rules for how you do spells and said you
Right.
can announce the spell before you pay for it, it fit.
Right, exactly. Which is, and so I think the way they did it originally and the third time is the most correct way based off of the way they make you do all the other things that cause you to pay the activated ability first.
Right. So this card, I do play in some CEDH tournaments, so it has come up. So I learned, first I'm like, this is a garbage card. How are people playing it? Then I learned about you can announce the spell first. But at the time I learned that, the people who were playing it didn't even realize that this rule had changed again.
Right.
It had already been changed again. So
I don't think I realized it got 3 mana.
Oh, no.
Because it's not a card I own, and I don't typically want to discard my hand, but I need to buy this card.
I mean, there's one up for
It's
grabs tonight at a CDH tournament. So.
I don't want to do a tournament. I play casual. I just want to have fun.
So,
But I'll just buy it.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting card. And the reason why the Underworld Breach thing works, by the way, because I know everyone's going to say, well, Underworld Breach says when you cast it, it goes to exile instead. Well, the thing is, though, that only specifically works if the card would go back to the graveyard immediately. So if you cast an instant or sorcery, that would then immediately go back to the graveyard. Instead, it gets exiled. Well, because it's an artifact and it costs nothing, you're generating infinite mana.
Right.
Because you're casting it, you're resacking it, recasting it, resacking it.
So it's not infinite because you do have to exile 3 cards from your graveyard for
Oh,
Underworld Breach.
yeah, that's right. For Underworld Breach.
But
so you can
certainly.
But if you've
loop-
dumped
can
a
loop
ton of,
it,
if
yeah.
you dumped a ton of cards in your graveyard,
well, and it's often used with
essentially-
Brainstorm.
yeah.
brains.
Because Brainstorm has Storm, and you're going to keep casting that one too, and you're going to keep cutting cards in your graveyard. So it is going to win you the game.
which
Because you just loop it enough times to the next time you cast
Right.
Brainstorm, you do there and somebody else's entire library.
And that's competitive. That's
Yeah.
For sure,
But
yeah. So this is a
Lion's Eye
CDH
Diamond-
card,
yeah,
too.
this is a very
This is not
CEDH
really
card.
meant for casual.
But this is an instance where I thought it was worth mentioning because it's changed twice. And so now anybody who's arguing any side of it can find the answer that matches what they say on the internet. So I'm just letting people know it is now. You must discard your hand before you announce your spell.
Yeah,
and they can find that on Magic's website, right?
They
yeah,
can,
you
but
make sure
Yeah.
you're finding the most recently
yeah,
posted
because
article.
they list all the rulings. It's going to show.
Yeah, make sure you're looking at the most recently posted one with the most recent date.
Right,
Because
right,
that is how they do it. They do show
Also, you're
chronologically.
probably not going to run into this much.
Yeah,
This is a
and unless
$500
you're
card.
unless you're CEDHing a lot, you're not gonna see this card that often. I don't think any of us have it in any of our decks. That's our considered casual.
No, not in any case.
I don't think any of us own this card.
I don't.
Nor do I.
Because I don't use it enough that I proxy it for CEDH tournaments where proxies are legal. I really don't use it.
I think I want to buy this and Wheel of Fortune are probably my next two targets.
Yeah, Wheel of Fortune's great too.
Let's move on to the main topic, and that's are the colors balanced?
No.
Well, okay. Well, hold on. Back up.
Sorry.
So first of all, let's talk about in the beginning, right? In the beginning, the very beginning, they just did new spells and new colors, and they didn't really have a theme. They had a little bit of a theme, but they would cross over, right? That's why you have blue spells that can destroy things. It's why you have their black spells that can draw a lot of cards.
Sure.
So then they kind of said, well, hold on, let's kind of give them each their own niche. Let's carve this out. So, there's just traditional, they're not hard and fast rules, but they're general guidelines. Blue does not destroy things anymore.
Well,
Except for Pognify.
Well, that's an old
but
card.
that's an older card. Pognify and Rapid Hybridization.
They made a big deal when a couple sets ago they made a saga where blue card would destroy stuff.
Right. I mean, okay, so
white is about protection and healing. Traditionally, it has not been good at drawing cards. It has not been good at dealing with spells on the stack.
it doesn't do a lot of searching either. Like it doesn't. You don't dig your library a lot.
A
with
little
it.
bit. I mean,
Again, a little, but comparatively to what its main idea is, you're not going to build a white deck.
It just tutors for different stuff.
Right, specific things.
Yeah, it's not like you're
black can tutor for everything.
Literally everything.
Black tends to be more sacrifice, more
self-damage to gain benefits.
Yep. Red is chaos and straight burn damage.
Direct damage, yeah.
Yep. Green is stompy creatures and ramp, right? Traditionally, that's kind of their roles. And then what they've done over the past several years is they've tried to even it out, because the problem is blue is really good at drawing cards.
Right.
Black has some card draw.
Right.
You usually have to pay life for it.
Right.
But the other colors really didn't. Green has some based on creatures, but white and red were definitely lacking in the card draw. And
yeah, they were the least.
Yep. So they've worked on it. And now white has gotten more card draw than red, but red has more. Now they can exile cards and play those cards as if they were in their hands. So it's still card advantage. It's still kind of
pseudo card advantage, I would say. Yeah.
Well, it's card advantage. It's just not card draw.
Right.
And it's a limited window of when you could use it usually.
Yeah.
So so they've worked on balancing these things out a little bit, trying to make things a little more even. Now, the argument is, though, they haven't cut back on the other stuff, right? So, like when they came out with the card draw for white, and they came out with this card advantage idea for red, and then they came out with, ways for white to exile spells on the stack so that it's a counter, basically, without countering, without using the word counter or using the counter mechanic, so they can deal with spells on the stack.
Because white was the weakest.
Right.
Yeah.
And then red in next order.
Right. And so they gave red the ability to counter some stuff. They gave it to Walt's Trickery. They gave it Deflecting Swalt so it can switch targets,
Yeah.
But so they've tried to do that. But while they did that, green still got super powerful creatures, more powerful than they had in the past.
More card draw.
More card draw for
ramp.
blue. More ramp for green.
Like Open the Way, which is disgusting.
So there's a back and forth going on in the community right now. Like, is it balanced enough now, or have they not done enough?
I think they need to go back to what they were doing before, which is let each color have its thing. And the reason why I say that is because if you start giving all the colors all the things, you're going to ruin the point of having multicolored decks. You're going to ruin the point of having these colors. Because if everyone can draw cards and counter and destroy things and have big stompy creatures, if everyone can do everything, then what's the point of having the color identities, right?
Flavor.
Yeah,
I think they have flavor. Like they can all
They can
draw
do the
cards,
stuff,
but they do it differently.
ways. Yeah.
sure. But again, my point is though, you're going to get to a point of where, like you're saying, if you keep doing it more and more, eventually every color is going to be able to do everything.
Well,
I think the point is each type of color should be really good at one or two things, and everything else it should be lacking. And so it forces you to play another color to make your deck better.
I disagree with you on that, because if someone wants to play humans or angels or whatever, back in the day, it's like, hey, I want to play that deck. It's unplayable. You can't play it. It's just, but now you can. Now humans are playable. Angels are playable. Like you can play these decks.
Because they have multicolored creatures that allow you to dig into the other colors you need to make them better.
No,
Yeah, he's talking
mono
about
white.
mono white.
Mono white is fine. Mono white humans works great. So does mono white angels. It works fine because there's card draw now.
Right, and I'm with Jeff on this. I think it's important that the colors work together, and it's important that the colors can stand alone on their own. If it was like you said, Sloan, the only colors that would be played monocolor are black and blue.
Maybe green.
Maybe green. Yeah.
But you wouldn't be interacting with people as much. You would mostly just be
right. And again, my
ramping
point,
them out.
My point is, I'm not saying that they shouldn't ever be able to do anything ever else besides one or two things. That's not what I'm saying. My point is if you keep making them be able to do everything more and more and more to the point of where there's no reason to ever play more than a monocolored deck, you're going to take away from it. So I'm not saying don't create the Smothering Tide. I'm not saying don't create the the other cards that are giving benefits, the one creature that flashes in, and whenever a player draws a card, you get to draw a card and gain life or another search. I'm not saying that you can't have those. What I'm saying is, and this is kind of going to the point I was making about power creep in the last episode, is make sure you're doing it responsibly. Like, don't give white a bunch of counters and a bunch of ways to search, and like you got to scale it back.
They haven't.
I understand it, but they're going that way. So they're doing it more and more to where they're giving them more and more ways to do it, and you're starting to take away from the identity of the other colors and what they're supposed to be. I'm going to
agree with Johnny a little bit and say, yes, and what I mean by that is, like, I think what you're saying is kind of right. If you give white card draw, that's fine. But don't make the card draw as good as green, okay? Or as good as blue. Maybe not as good as blue. So, because blue, then you have a reason to play blue if you want, because it's more optimal.
Well, and the thing is, the card draw they've given white is either limited, in the case of Esper Sentinel, one time per person per turn.
Right.
Right? Or
it's suboptimal.
It's responsive. If somebody draws their second card, you can draw a card. If somebody attacks you with two or more creatures, you can draw a card. It's responsive to try and help you respond to these other effects.
Right. For now it is. Like, again, as long as they're keeping it regulated, I think it's okay. But if they're my problem is that they're starting to go a little too far with, like, they're starting to get where they're getting too far with it.
It's not actually new. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know
for instance, let's take card draw for
the
for
sky
a
is not falling yet, Chicken Little.
So
I didn't say the sky was
blue
falling
cards.
yet,
We're always drawing cards, right? Necropotence. In my opinion, the best card draw spell in the game, and I'm not even sure it technically even says it draws cards, but I think it exiles them.
Yeah,
but,
you look at the top.
But whatever.
Top X cards
In my
exile.
opinion, it's the best card draw in the game, and it's in black. Green has amazing card draw that are old cards. They've existed for a long time. Sometimes what we're reacting to is the fact that when Magic starts to respond to a weak color, like let's say white, they plan that out, 2-3 years ago, and then those cards don't come out until now.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're probably going to respond to the current meta, but it takes them a lot of time.
Sure, and I get that, but the big thing is though too, like the older cards that you're talking about, like green with its big stompy creatures, for example, right?
Yeah.
White was always, when it came to its creature base, was more about going wide. It was always about making a bunch of smaller creatures and a lot of them really quickly. Well, then green started doing that. Then blue started doing that, and so like my point is that they've kind of done it slowly over the years, and again, with more recent stuff, it's a little bit more drastic. It's less cards that are doing it, but the effect is more drastic that does it, right? Like we talked about the tripling tokens, right? That's a more drastic effect. There's only a couple cards that do it, but it's a more drastic effect that's doing it by tripling instead of just being doubling.
So do you have a problem if they add these different things across the colors as long as it's suboptimal? Meaning, as long as it's not as good. Like, yeah, you can tutor in white, but just make sure it's not as good as black's tutors.
So, and let's just clear up what's happening here. So, the topic at hand was, are the colors balanced? And it sounds like what Sloan is saying is they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be to a point, meaning they shouldn't. I'm not saying that they shouldn't all be good colors to play. What I'm saying is they all shouldn't get balanced to the point of where you don't need the other colors in your deck. Like, you shouldn't lose the identity of red being a direct damage color and black being a self-damage to gain benefits color and blue being a card draw and control color. Like, you shouldn't lose that identity for those colors.
But I think what you're missing is so white can now draw cards, but not anywhere near as well as blue or black or even green.
Right. And I think for now,
Although it's getting pretty close.
that's what I'm saying. Like, they're slowly doing it. And like Jeff said, they're responding. These cards are coming out from when they were created 2 to 3 years ago. But the problem is, I feel like sometimes they're not taking into the account the sets that they already created that haven't come out yet from 2 or 3 years ago. When they're creating the new sets, they're going to come out in 2 to 3 years.
It is hard to balance, but if we go back to that thing, is it balanced? I think what we just said.
I mean, I think it's balanced, yeah.
I think what we just said is important. Green, black, blue draw cards really well, right?
Yep.
But white and red still don't.
Right. And in my opinion, they shouldn't do it as well. You need to give up something to have it be good at something else in order for the game to be more well-rounded.
Why should 3 get to do it while the other 2 don't?
Well, and that's part of my problem is that they've already made that mistake twice. Like, they shouldn't have let green and black do it as well. Like, they should have one color should be good at it. And again,
but the problem
it comes
is
back to the idea that it helps keep the checks and balance of the game, because if every color can start doing everything, it's going to get a little out of hand.
But what happens? Okay, so which is stronger? Me drawing 4 cards or Jeff playing a 12-12 with trample?
You drawing 4 cards.
It depends. What does his 12-12 with trample do? How many blockers do you have? What kind of blockers do you have? What kind of damage prevention do you have? What kind of cards are you drawing? Like, that's my point, is that yes, you're drawing cards, but if the cards that you're drawing, if we're going to do all monocolored decks, right? White by far is the weakest, right? As a monocolored deck.
So you're saying even right now, so to answer the question we're trying to ask,
maybe red is the weakest.
you're still saying that they're weaker.
It's either red or white. They're both pretty weak as a monocolored thing. But the reason why they're weak in comparison right now to the other colors is because of the fact that those other colors are doing things that they shouldn't be doing as well as white and red, which are the ones that should be doing it better. Like, that's my point, is that they unintentionally or intentionally already set 3 colors better, and they're trying to, I guess, play catch up with the other 2 colors, but they keep doing better stuff for the other colors at the same time.
Because part of the problem is, what's white's really big thing that it can do?
It goes wide.
No,
Life gain.
it destroys lands. No, we're not allowed to do that.
That's not
a
even
major
near,
white
no,
thing.
No,
Oh,
it's
sure
not.
it is.
I mean, there's
Going
a handful
wide.
of cards that do
Going
that.
wide and lifelink are its 2 biggest things, I would say.
Land destruction is a big thing in white. There's a lot of land destruction cards in
There's
white,
like
and we
2.
can't play them.
There's 2.
I mean, I would be surprised if there's more than 5 specific
I mean,
land
there's some that
destruction cards.
balance lands.
Yep.
There's some that balance lands and keep it balanced.
Yep. And
But-
also, it has some stack stuff to it, too, on balance.
Yeah, it's true. Stack is another big thing that white does.
Yeah. So,
But that a lot of people don't play.
But my point is that the identity for the colors need to be balanced for what they're doing, and they don't need to be balanced that they all do what everyone else does.
Well, to what my question was, I agree with Jeff. I think the person drawing 4 cards is potentially more dangerous because, like you said, everything you talked about is your board state versus Jeff's creature. I still drew 4 cards.
Sure, but if you have nothing to block with, and I hit you 3 times with a 12-12, you're dead.
You don't need anything to block with. You draw 4 cards, you could probably just kill it for 2 mana.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or you just drew 4 lands.
I mean, that's not.
That's
I mean, but
statistically unlikely,
Yeah.
but I mean, it happens to all of us. but-
Exactly. But my point is that if blue is meant to be the card draw and control, it shouldn't also be a token generator. It shouldn't also be like
So my argument is this: card draw is way more powerful than, in my opinion, than anything any of the other colors can do.
Right.
You give it card draw and counters in the same color. That is way more powerful than anything anyone else can do, because I can just stop you from doing with those 2 things in abundance. I can just stop you from doing everything else you want to do.
So you think though? So my point is, here's my point. So let's say I'll let you answer after. So here's my point. Let's say you're going mono blue and you're a card draw counter deck, and let's say I'm going mono white as it should be correctly mono white made, not the crappy mono white it is now. So let's say I'm doing that. Let's say I have a bunch of low to the ground quick creatures, Sarah Ascendant, Champion of Parish, all these cards that are super low cost, low to the ground. On turn 3, I have 5 creatures out. You have 3 lands and 3 cards. What are you doing? Like, you might be able to stop 1 or 2, but I'm gaining 6 life with Sarah Ascendant. I've got 4 counters on Champion of the... Like, that's my point.
What am I doing to that if I have 4 cards?
If it's turn 3, I have 5 creatures out. Yeah. You have 3 lands. I have 3 lands. And you have your hand full, and I'm down to maybe 3 cards. My point is, yeah, you might have a response to maybe 1 or 2 things, but if I keep dumping out 5 or 6 things constantly, eventually your card draw is not going to be able to keep up with my creature
Except that
creation.
what I'm going to do is return all your stuff to your hand.
Sure, if you can. Or just if you can get to that point quick enough. And that's my point, is that if...
And you're saying if you can even get that out. I'm saying I have a ton of counters.
But
you're not going to get half of that out.
If at 2 mana, you have a ton of counters that can stop 4 creatures that cost 1 mana each.
You say I had 3 mana. I can think of...
Three mana.
Right, so 3 mana.
3 mana to my 3 mana. So turn 1, I got...
a counter spell, a suspend, and a force of will, and one other blue card.
Turn 1, I get a creature out. You countering it? Sarah Ascendant comes out turn 1.
Oh, Sarah Ascendant. Heck yeah, I'm countering that.
Great. Turn 2, I get 2 more creatures out. You got 2 mana.
So you get 2 more creatures out?
Yeah, they cost 1 each. I got 2 more out.
Okay, you can have them both.
Okay, great. Turn 3, I get 3 more creatures out.
If I may, real quick.
So that's my point, is that if they were to balance it more correctly...
Apparently you may not.
I'll finish my point and I'll let him go.
You said that already.
If they were to balance it more correctly, and they were to have it to where... Yes, blue is more control and card draw comparative to they do that plus all this other stuff really well. It takes away from the identity of that color is all I'm trying to say. So I don't want that to happen. I want people to say, oh, white is known for doing this.
Jeff, you've been waiting patiently.
So go ahead.
So there's 160 life on the board when we're playing Commander.
Sure.
So the way I typically play, and you guys have seen this, I don't care if I go down to 5 life. I don't care at all. I play shock lands. I play all this stuff.
Seems.
Go ahead. Take me down to 5 life. And then on turn 5 or 6, even turn 4, I board wipe. You're done. You don't have cards in hand because you probably didn't have a draw engine because all you had was gas. You now have no cards. And it's a waiting game. And now I'm going to beat you in card advantage. And that's typically how the games go in Commander because there's 160 life for you to kill with small creatures. When Commander is a problem, it really is. Because when there wasn't Commander and it was one-on-one, yeah, 100%. You could race me. You could aggro me out. It's certainly more difficult today, especially with as many board wipes as there are.
Right.
But none of this matters. The question was, is it balanced? I believe it's pretty balanced. Red and white are a little bit weaker, but I'm okay with it. I think they've done a good job, actually. Right. That's my point.
And so your fear, Sloan, you're saying blue has not gained a ton of ability to go wide with creatures. There are ways to do it, sure, but it's not as efficient or as well as white or green. And to be clear, green had that ability before white.
No, green was big stompy. Green's original thing was big stompy.
In the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning.
In the very beginning.
Yeah, it's big stompy. Its whole thing was, I'm going to put 1 creature out and make it a 77.
Well, in the very beginning, there was no go wide. Right?
Yeah, it was 1v1.
Okay.
So.
In the olden times, there was no go wide. There was go big and stompy.
And none of us played then
when
anyways.
Go wide, green and white were pretty much together. If we went and researched, maybe you could figure out white had it maybe 1 set before green, but it's pretty much they go together. They got it at the same time. And I think that is green's thing more than it's white. You think it's very white thing. I think white is some of that with the life link and with the stacks.
But my only point is if you look at...
But my point is they have not given green now the ability to life gain, right? They have not given black the ability to draw more cards over
green doesn't have life gain through creatures, but it definitely has life gain in it now by...
It does. It has some card draws that also gain you life. But it's not optimal.
Right,
Again,
but they haven't made an effort to give that to them more than they had as they have with white, with card draw, as they have with red, with the... So they haven't, at the same time they're doing this, still all I said was that they have given them still more, even better big stompy creatures. They've upped that to now where the 12-12 is like, are you kidding me? I got an 18-19. Like, let's go.
When the game gets to the point that we're not this passionate about the discussion, then we're having a problem. But the good news is everybody out there has an opinion. We're all passionate about it. And that's great because that means the game is pretty healthy.
So I understand your fears.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think we're there yet. You're worried about the future. I think.
But the only thing I can point to is that it's basically what you guys said is that blue, green, and black are now doing things that white and red does, but better.
Like what?
Well, I mean, you literally just said it. They're getting better at going more wide instead of focusing on one creature. They are. They have doubling season. They have parallel lives. They have a lot of token generators.
Well, that's why I say
Cather's Crusade. There are white cards that are really good.
And white has the token tripler.
Cather's Crusade's very old. Like that's a very old card. But I'm just saying.
So is doubling season.
I'm just saying that the idea that the balance comes from everyone being able to do everything well is not what I consider balance.
So what
I consider balance, every card being really good at one or two things, every color rather being really good at one or two things, and then they lack in other things that makes them have to complement it with another color.
I agree to that, but I also think you're missing the fact that, so what I think the problem stems from, draw and tutor should not have been color dependent. Those are two very important parts of Magic, and I think that should have been available to everybody.
Well, and we're not even talking about ramp also. Like, we're talking about card draw, but ramp, I mean, you go to green. A lot of people
we ain't
complain
even
about
talking about ramp.
Yeah,
man.
so I mean, ramp might be one.
Card draw.
Yeah, green's ramp is disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, how the crap is blue supposed to catch up with that? It's pretty hard.
So I think some of the things that are in color identities should not have been because they're more powerful than what you gave those other colors.
Well, we have to be careful though because Commander didn't exist.
Right.
It wasn't. That's why I'm saying Commander is the problem. They've had to reformat the game to fit Commander, and that's why the colors are becoming less different and unique, and they have to become more nebulous. They have to become more of the same.
I think actually, now that I think about it, the way to fix it would be what Duncan said is let's stop making black the tutor color and blue the card draw color. Let's try to focus on their other things as their identity and give that stuff more to the other colors, and then boost each color's what its real identity should be. So
I feel like they've kind of done.
I don't think they've done a great job of it yet, because the issue is like when they do give white or red stuff or green, they also still give it to black and blue.
Well, no, but I mean,
like, you see what I'm saying? Like, if they didn't do that, like, hey, black and blue don't, like, what was the card that came out? I think it was last year, Ledger Shredder, right? It's like you already have a million things that draw your cards, and now you're gonna beat up on other people for trying to cast more spells to catch up, and you're gonna keep drawing cards.
But Ledger Shredder wasn't made for us.
I get, but they made it when they knew Commander was a format.
But they had to make it for the other format.
Sure.
And it's really fun in that format.
So, and I will point out, they have, when was the last time a really good blue draw spell came out?
I just said Ledger Shredder.
Also,
No, but that's not really good. It's really good at beating people.
It's a
what's the land?
gets you one
What's
card.
the MDFC
no, it gets you
that's a
two.
land?
It surveils too.
But that's
When you cast, whenever a player, not an opponent, a player casts their second spell a turn, you get to surveil too.
It's just not draw, but it's close.
yeah, it's not draw,
I mean, it's top deck manipulation.
right.
That's which everyone loves.
which goes with their draw.
But there is a good card that came out, the MDFC, that can draw you a bunch of cards, and then I think it also might give you no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. What is that?
Yeah, and there's a saga and Jin Contaxious.
MDFC.
Yeah, so it's a modal double-faced land.
Oh, you're talking about the land that flips over.
Oh, so yeah, that is true. The Seagate's Restoration.
And your Jin Contaxious came out last year, a new one. Didn't it come out last year? The
Yeah,
one
but
that flips over and draws you.
Okay, so yeah, good point.
Yeah.
But again,
get out of here.
But those
Get out of
those
here.
are single instance. They're not repeatable.
I also think
You're telling me you don't repeat Jin Contaxious flipping over?
I think the state of the colors is not terrible, and even if red and white are slightly weaker in some areas, it's not a very
Well,
big
and
deal
I also
now. It's
wanted
not huge.
I wanted to argue that the only problem I see is, so you made white have more card advantage with their limited draw they can do. You've kind of brought them up.
And ramp. They
And-
get them good ramp.
Yep. And red has the card advantage through the
Exiling and you can cast until end of
But
turn
then you
stuff.
also come out with the One Ring, and now all the colors can add that to their deck. So now blue can have their normal to plus that.
You're right.
So to me, That's where they went.
You
wrong.
add a roaming throne. That's colors that you can put in everything.
I think both
that's
those
perfect.
cards are awesome.
They
They
are
are
awesome.
but I'm just
And
saying,
fun.
I think it was a mistake when you're trying to even things out. Wait till you have
Right,
gotten
and
there.
that's my point, is that if they're gonna try to even things out, don't keep giving the other colors when they're trying to catch up other colors better stuff too. Like try to balance it a little bit. Try to make it so you're kind of sharing the pie, as it were, and catching them up.
So here's
Ooh, pie. That would be delicious.
here's where I think we are.
Perkins pie.
I think that Jeff and I are saying the colors are better balanced now.
Yep.
Right. I think Sloan is saying you're getting rid of what
You're
magic-
balancing them wrong.
Yeah,
you're
you're
balancing them wrong.
Yeah, you're trying to balance them, but I think you're doing it incorrectly. But
Right.
they're trying to do it in a way, and like I said, that might lose the identity.
So let's talk. Let's say it a different way, Sloan.
Yeah.
Do you think that white and red are almost as powerful, more so now than they were before, compared to
They are
the
more
other three?
powerful than they used to be, for sure. They are better.
And do you think that they have caught up a little bit? Like, even though they brought the other ones up, do you feel like the gap is narrower?
No, because the fact is that they keep making the other ones
Okay,
better.
so you don't think they've narrowed the
No,
gap?
I think if you're going to try to pick out colors and say where's the closest power level, blue, black, green. Anyone says anything different, I know everyone's allowed to have an opinion. Blue, black, green, though, if you don't say that, you're wrong. They are the three closest. They are the three closest when it comes to individual color power level.
their opinion, but they're all wrong.
If you don't say that the three closest power level single color monocolors are blue, black, green, they are by far the closest when it comes to which one's more powerful. White and red, not
I
even a
hate
discussion.
what you said, but I can't really disagree
Right.
it's
Because
probably
that's the
true,
way
but
it
it is
is.
annoying the way
But-
you
but
said.
So
it.
I mean, but
I,
it
again, not
depends
saying
what
that they
you're-
haven't pulled white and red up a little bit. And I'm
Okay,
not saying that it basically went from the Grand Canyon to like they
Okay, so
added
you're
40
saying-
feet onto the Grand Canyon.
so you're
It's still a
saying-
gap, but it's.
Yeah. So you're saying they narrowed the gap?
I mean, when I think of narrow the
we
gap,
got him there.
when I think of narrow the gap, I mean an actual significance narrowing of the gap.
No,
They
but-
didn't really significantly narrow
Okay,
the
but they
gap at
did
all.
a little bit. They made a little chunk.
No, I'm taking it back. They did it. They did it at
okay,
all
so wait,
because
wait,
blue,
wait.
black, and green are still getting way better stuff constantly.
Hey, speaking of a gap, you know
Constantly.
where there's a big gap? In new players.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. So this was really kind of all counterspell, this whole segment.
Yeah, sorry guys.
But anyway, so let's talk about new players. Sloan, you got some tips for the new players?
I don't want to talk about it anymore. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, guys. So Jeff alluded to it earlier. We're gonna go over the color wheel and its names. So way back in the day, everything just used to be monocolor in the wee adolescence of Magic. Well, they came out with sets, and then people started coming up with names for these color combinations. I'm only gonna go over the 2-color ones today, just because there's 20 total. But the 2-color ones came up specifically when they came out with the guilds in Magic.
In Ravnica.
In Ravnica. And the colors became so synonymous with those guilds that the entire community just ran with it. And honestly, they're pretty cool. So we have white-blue as Azorius. We have red-white as Boros. We have blue-black as Dimmer.
Demir.
Dimir. We have black
Or
green,
dimmer, if you like
a
switches.
Golgari. You have red green as Gruul, blue red as Izzet, white black as Orzhov, white red as black red rather as Rakdos. You have white green as Selesnya, and you have blue green as Simic. So those are your 10 2-color combinations that are actual guilds in the lore of Magic, and that's where they got those names from. Now, there is a bunch of articles online that you can go look at and read that explains what the guilds did and how they came about in Ravnica and what each guild kind of represents in the world of Magic. But for the sake of brevity, I'm only going to say that whenever someone says, "Oh, my deck is Golgari," they mean it's a black-green deck. It probably has nothing to do with the lore of.
Yeah,
of
and that
the
was
guild.
and that was very confusing to me early
Right.
on, because I was like, how do the colors make these letters?
Right.
And I couldn't figure it out.
And-
So by people knowing that it has nothing to do with the letters of the words,
Right. It
know,
actually
that
has to
helps.
do with the lore of the. And the reason why Jeff thinks that is because anything that's 5-colored is known as Wooburg, which is white, blue, black, red, green. So that's why he's like, why are these letters like? There's no Z in white or blue. Like, why is it Azorius? So it actually had nothing to do with the hyphenating of the or abbreviation rather of the colors that they were in, but it had everything to do with where these guilds came from in Ravnica and their lores, and then the entire community just kind of accepted it as, if you're going to play those two colors, that's what
Again,
you're playing.
random people making stuff up. Although these might have been made by wizards.
Yeah, wizards actually came up with
someone
the guild.
started adopting them,
Right.
and making them mainstream.
Right.
And so just talking about, so Jeff was saying earlier for his Aggro Jeff segment, where do they come up with these names? So we're not going to go over all the 3-color, but just to tell you where they came from, there's 10 of those as well, the 3-color combinations. 5 of them are known as the MTG shards, and they were from the Alara set, referring to the shards of Alara set. And then the other 5 are known as wedges, and those came from the 5 clans of Tarkir, from the Tarkir block, Khans of Tarkir block. So that's where those colors came from. But the weird one is the 4-color.
Right. There's only 5 4-color combinations.
And so I asked somebody, well, where the heck did those come from? So Wizards never officially named those 4-color, but there are Nephilim, and there are 5 Nephilim.
And they're creature. That's a creature, by the way.
That all have 4 colors each. And so they're named after those Nephilim.
Right. And the thing that's really funny that a lot of people are sad about is that they are really cool creature cards that have really cool abilities that are really unique, not legendary though.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are like, can you please Oracle text this and make it a
Well,
legendary
because a
creature?
couple of them would be disgusting commanders.
Yeah, they're not even. Like
Yeah.
they're not.
But there are people who, there's a guy that I follow, and he actually has one of them as his, hidden commander, his second commander in his deck, and he actually doesn't even care about the commander in the command zone. He's actually trying to dig for the Nephilim, and then play it, and then that's how he plays, because it's a pretty cool ability on it. So,
And then the last one is the one you talked about, which is Wooburg, which is the
Wooburg.
one that actually makes sense to me.
yeah, it's the only one that makes sense because it's literally just the first letter minus blue, which is you, of all the colors
It is
in the
me.
color.
I
wheel.
am blue. Thank you.
You're-
Oh, I'm sad. I'm sad. You're sad.
Yeah. Well, Duncan has a U in it, so I guess we can say technically the U comes from Duncan.
Yep, it does, because I'm blue.
He is our blue player. So, but that's your color wheel. We'll probably touch on the other ones and maybe like look into maybe the lore a little bit more. But yeah,
and
look
it's
up the
also a
Ravnica
sad
guilds.
face. It's
Yeah.
almost a sad face. You turn upside down and be sad.
Yeah,
He's
because you're
happy
playing
in
against a
his
blue
U.
player.
Yeah.
But those are the shorthand names for the 10 2-color combinations in Magic. So if you hear those, you kind of have an idea of what people are sitting down and playing just based off of
And
that.
You got some
single word
background on where
descriptors.
it came from,
Right.
where they're getting these names from, what it means.
Yeah.
So I think that's useful because you do hear those thrown out, and it's like, wait, what? What is that?
Yeah.
So that's a good one. But that's about all the time we have for today. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Jack May at Info Programs for editing. You can email us at cast@commanderspod.com. You can check out our website at commanderspod.com. You can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/commanderspod. We have our Twitter, commanders_pod. So check us out, all those things. Interact with us. We really want to tell your stories. We want to hear from you, hear what you want to hear next. And as always, kill
Kill
Andrew
Duncan
first.
first.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
It's kill Andrew.